So what can Canberra, what can the ACT do? No direct flights, obviously, but is there an option to have flights go from Sydney, then come straight to the ACT? And what capacity could we have to take Australians returning from overseas?
Look, our expectation is chartered flights, one per quarantine cycle every 14 to 18 days. And that we've done a couple of these flights before. There's not a lot of commercial interest, I think, in flying to Canberra at the moment, but chartered flights could well work. The necessary preconditions for that are a quarantine hotel that is only taking international arrivals, so no mix with domestic tourists. We would also require both Australian Federal Police, Australian Defence Force support, and obviously engagement with the Australian Border Force. And we would want to know where the flight was coming from, and I would need absolute comfort that this could be managed safely. We're in caretaker period now. We've got an election on, so before we went into caretaker, I tasked ACT officials to continue working with the Commonwealth and with our local accommodation industry to identify a hotel or two that would be prepared to be exclusively a quarantine hotel for a period of time. The numbers that we would anticipate being able to manage would be around 150. So that would be one chartered flight every 14 to 18 days. We have hundreds of people in quarantine at the moment in domestic context, particularly those who are coming to the ACT out of Victoria. We've also got to manage the federal parliament as well, and so that has required us to have hundreds and hundreds of people in quarantine. So we're using ACT Police to undertake daily checks on the hundreds of people that we've got currently in quarantine, and over the course of the last 6 months we've had thousands of people. I'm not prepared to put at risk our effective quarantine management in the Territory. So to do this safely, we will require the Commonwealth to step up to the plate as well. They have hundreds of police, Australian Federal Police, who are based in the ACT, who could assist ACT policing with managing the international arrivals. I would anticipate that the ACT would be in a position to take flights from November to assist with getting people home before Christmas.
All right, so 150 over a fortnight. We'll see what is thrashed out perhaps at National Cabinet. We do have Canberrans now allowed to travel from the ACT to South Australia as of, I think it was midnight last night. Did this take some convincing, and how did this change? How did it become that now ACT is not considered part of New South Wales, which you were previously happy with, but over the weekend you said this definition no longer suits the times of COVID-19?
That's right. I think in the early days of the pandemic, it was entirely reasonable for the other states to look at the ACT and New South Wales together. We have open borders between the ACT and New South Wales. In fact, the ACT, of all the jurisdictions, has never closed our land border. We've never had a hard border with other states and territories, and we've managed this pandemic better than most. We are conscious, of course, of the risk that that open border entails, but we now have 6 months of lived experience. If there was going to be the virus being brought into the ACT from New South Wales residents or Canberrans coming home, we would have seen rampant community transmission over the last 6 months. We haven't. So I've put that case to other state leaders calmly, rationally and behind the scenes. I'm not interested in shouty political games. We just want to get results, just as we have for the Canberrans who got home through New South Wales when the New South Wales-Victoria border was closed and there were hundreds of people left stranded in Wodonga. And this very good outcome between South Australia and the ACT again reflects a different style of political leadership, one that seeks to get actual results not yell at people across borders, and not seek to gain partisan political advantage just because a state election is emerging. It's been really disappointing, frankly, across the nation to see the pile-on Queensland when very little was said about South Australia and Tasmania. But I want to credit the South Australian Liberal Premier, where you have different sides of the political fence, but we've been able to work together really constructively to get this positive outcome. We need more of that sort of engagement between the states and territories, and less of the shouty, politics as usual, tedious stuff that Australians are just sick to the back teeth of at the moment.
But what about Queensland? The Premier there says when it comes to the border, including from ACT, that it's all about health advice, and yet the ACT is accepted all the way through people from Queensland where there is COVID-19. So does that confuse you? What health advice that's based on versus your health advice? Is it a case that you don't get health advice that says close the border or open the border, but you get told about risks and then you make decisions based on those risks?
That's essentially it, Tom. You do need to balance risks. You need to ensure that you've got in place the appropriate mechanisms should there be a case that comes into your jurisdiction. There will be more cases in the ACT in the future. I'm absolutely certain of that. There's no way that you can avoid it, but what you can do is put in place mechanisms to manage it effectively, and that's what we've done. And we will take small positive steps forward as we move into the next stages of the pandemic response. The South Australian example is one of those small positive steps. I'm looking to work with Tasmania, again another jurisdiction that has little or no COVID activity for some time. Look, I've sent a message to the Premier this morning. We've been talking for many months now, and I would hope that the ACT and Tasmania could work together. We could manage something safely, particularly that was around reuniting families ahead of Christmas. I think that can be done very safely. We'll continue to work with
So would that Premier just be families with Tasmania? Travel for family
look, I wouldn't see it as... No, I wouldn't necessarily put that caveat on it, but I'm not suggesting that we're opening up a massive tourism thing here, but it would be, I think, sensible and practical for us to be able to work together on a few flights a week that would be several hundred people, not thousands and thousands. I know the Premier has set a date around the 1st of December.
Okay. We're just a bit short on time, so I want to ask you about Queensland as well. How is the situation going there? Do you expect an imminent breakthrough? We heard the Premier talk about ID issues for people from ACT. Is there something you think will be announced soon?
Well, look, I think the practical experience that we'll have with the South Australian arrangements would give confidence to other states and territories. So I understand they'll want to see for a few weeks how that goes and how we manage those ID issues. The declaration process that's required and how South Australia manages that when Canberrans get off the plane in Adelaide. The fact that it's air travel only, I think gives greater confidence in terms of it being able to be managed. And so clearly there's a number of different airports into Queensland that would normally be accessed from Canberra, so Gold Coast and Brisbane, and then in times past it's even gone further north up to Townsville. We'll need to continue that, but perhaps as a first step, we get this South Australian process underway. People can see how it actually works in practice, and that will give them confidence to then make an evidence-based decision to allow ACT residents to travel into Queensland, into Tasmania, and hopefully at some point next year into WA. I'm sure a lot of tourism businesses and families are hoping so. ACT Chief Minister Andrew Barr, thanks for your time today.